My name is Diana Sommers. I am 68 years old. 3 weeks after I buried my husband of 42 years, I watched my daughter-in-law throw our wedding photos into a black trash bag. She didn't even take them out of the frames. Glass shattered against glass, and with each crack, something inside me shattered too. "Move on, Mom," she said, not even looking at me. "The dead don't need frames." That same night, she moved me out of the master bedroom I'd shared with Robert for 4 decades. My new room? The storage closet at the end of the hall. 8 feet by 10 feet. No window, just boxes of Christmas decorations and the smell of mothballs. She thought I was just a grieving old woman, too broken to fight, too old to matter. She didn't know I'd spent 35 years as a chief accountant. She didn't know about the documents in my safe deposit box. And she certainly didn't know that the house she was so eager to claim had never belonged to us at all. Before I tell you what happened next, please take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if you truly enjoy this story. And while you're at it, drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is there. Now let me take you back to the beginning. People always said I was the quiet one. In 42 years of marriage, I learned that silence was easier than argument. Robert handled the big decisions, the mortgage, the investments, the conversations with our son Derek that required a firm hand. I handled everything else, the cooking, the cleaning, the invisible labor that kept our home running like a well-oiled machine. I didn't mind. That was the deal we'd made, and Robert never once made me feel small for it. But Megan did. From the day Derek brought her home 8 years ago, I felt her eyes measuring me, calculating. She smiled at Robert, always at Robert, but when she looked at me, something cold flickered behind her perfectly made-up face. "Mom, just let it go," Derek would say whenever I mentioned her little jabs, the way she'd comment on my cooking being too heavy, the way she'd rearrange my kitchen cabinets without asking, the way she'd talk over me at family dinners as if I weren't even there. Robert noticed. He'd squeeze my hand under the table, a silent promise that he saw what I saw, but he handled it gently, the way he handled everything. "Megan's still adjusting," he'd say. "Give her time." I gave her 8 years. Once a month, Robert would meet with Harold, his lawyer. They'd been friends since college, and their lunches always ran long. When I asked what they discussed, Robert would just smile and say, "Business stuff, nothing for you to worry about." I never pressed. That was Robert's world, not mine. I wish now that I had asked more questions. Our house was a colonial-style 4-bedroom on Maple Street, white with black shutters, and a wraparound porch that Robert repainted every 3 years, whether it needed it or not. We bought it in 1985, the year Derek was born, and I'd spent 4 decades filling it with memories. The kitchen where I taught Derek to make his grandmother's apple pie, the living room where Robert and I slow danced to Frank Sinatra on our anniversaries, the master bedroom with the bay window where I'd sit and watch the sunrise while Robert snored softly beside me. Our wedding photo hung above the fireplace in a silver frame Robert had picked out himself. "The best day of my life," he'd say every time he passed it. "The day you said yes." Sunday mornings were our sacred time. Robert would make coffee, always too strong, but I never complained, and we'd sit on the back porch watching the garden wake up. He'd planted roses the year we moved in. Red ones, because he said they reminded him of the bouquet I'd carried at our wedding. After I retired at 62 and Robert at 65, we made plans. A trip to Italy, visiting our grandchildren, if Derek and Megan ever had any, growing old together in the house we'd built with our own hands. In the basement, Robert kept a small safe. Important documents, he told me when he installed it. Tax returns, insurance policies. The deed to the house, I assumed. I never asked for the combination. That was Robert's domain, and I trusted him completely. I had no idea that safe held the key to everything, that it would save my life. Megan worked in marketing for a real estate company downtown. She was good at her job. I'll give her that. She knew how to sell things, how to make people want what she was offering, including my son. Derek met her at a networking event when he was 32. 6 months later, they were engaged. A year after that, married in a ceremony that cost more than our first car. Megan had expensive taste, and Derek had never learned to say no to a beautiful woman. From the beginning, she talked about our house differently than we did. Where I saw memories, she saw square footage. Where Robert saw a legacy, she saw an investment opportunity. "Have you two ever thought about downsizing?" she asked one Thanksgiving, her fork pausing midair. "A nice condo would be so much easier to maintain. And this neighborhood, the property values are through the roof. You could make a killing." Robert's hand found mine under the table. "We're not going anywhere, Megan. This is our home." She smiled that smile of hers, the one that never quite reached her eyes. "Of course. I'm just thinking about what's practical." I overheard her once, talking to Derek in the kitchen when they thought I was napping. Her voice carried in that house, no matter how much she tried to whisper. "This place is worth at least $1.2 million. When are your parents going to be realistic about selling?" Derek's response was silence. That silence should have told me everything I needed to know about my son, about the man he'd become, about the battle that was coming. But I was still naive then. I still believed blood was thicker than a real estate listing. October 14th started like any other Tuesday. Robert woke up early to water the roses. I was in the kitchen making his breakfast. 2 eggs over easy, whole wheat toast, the same meal he'd eaten for 30 years, when I heard a sound I'll never forget. A gasp, then a thud. I found him on the back porch, one hand clutching his chest, the other reaching toward me. His face was gray, his lips were blue, and his eyes, those warm brown eyes that had looked at me with love for 42 years, were filled with terror. "Diana," he whispered, "Diana, He never finished the sentence. The ambulance came in 7 minutes. I rode in the back, holding his hand, praying to a God I wasn't sure was listening. The paramedics worked on him the whole way, their faces grim, their movements urgent. At the hospital, they rushed him into surgery. I sat in the waiting room alone, still wearing my house slippers, still smelling like the eggs I'd never finished cooking. 3 hours later, a doctor in blue scrubs told me my husband was gone. Massive heart attack. Nothing they could do. I was still sitting there, numb, when Derek and Megan arrived. 20 minutes late. Megan's makeup was perfect. Her heels clicked against the linoleum like a metronome counting down to something I couldn't yet see. Derek hugged me. It felt hollow. And then Megan spoke. "Did he leave a will?" I stared at her. My husband's body was still warm in the morgue, and she was asking about paperwork. "I don't know," I heard myself say. I don't know." Megan's eyes flickered, just for a moment. But I saw it. Calculation. Opportunity. I was too broken to understand what it meant. Too lost in grief to recognize the predator circling. But that question, asked before I'd even signed the death certificate, should have been my warning. The war had already begun. The funeral was beautiful. I suppose that's what people say when they don't know what else to offer. Pastor Davis spoke about Robert's kindness, his dedication to family, his quiet faith. The church was full, neighbors, colleagues, friends we'd known for decades. Everyone said the right things. Everyone brought casseroles I couldn't eat. Megan organized everything. She chose the flowers, white lilies, not the red roses Robert would have wanted. She designed the program, modern and minimalist, nothing like the man it was meant to honor. She stood at the door greeting guests like she was hosting a cocktail party, her black dress designer, her sympathy perfectly rehearsed. I floated through it all like a ghost at my own husband's funeral. Afterward, Megan started helping with the house, sorting through Robert's clothes, boxing up his books, clearing out his office with an efficiency that felt less like grief and more like an estate sale. "Mom, you should rest," she said when I tried to intervene. "Let me handle this." I asked to keep his old cardigan, the brown one with the patched elbows that he wore every Sunday morning. Megan wrinkled her nose. "It smells, Mom, but fine, if it makes you feel better." At the reception, Harold Smith found me in the corner, Robert's lawyer, his oldest friend. He took my hands in his, and I saw something in his eyes that cut through my fog. Urgency. "Diana," he said quietly, "when you're ready, when you feel strong enough, call me. Robert left instructions. There are things you need to know." I nodded, not understanding. I wouldn't understand for weeks. But Harold's words planted themselves in my grief-soaked mind, waiting to bloom. They moved in on the second week. "Just temporarily," Derek explained, carrying boxes through the front door. "To help you, Mom. You shouldn't be alone right now." I didn't want them there, but I was too tired to argue, too hollowed out by grief to fight. And part of me, the part that still believed my son loved me, thought maybe he was right. Maybe I did need help. I was wrong. Within days, Megan had claimed the living room as her home office. My reading chair was pushed into the corner. My books were stacked in the garage. Her laptop and ring light took over the space where Robert and I used to sit and watch the evening news. "I work remotely now," she said, not looking up from her screen. "I need a professional setup." My kitchen became her kitchen. She rearranged the cabinets, threw out my expired spices, some of which I'd had for years, and installed a coffee machine that cost more than my first month's salary. "You don't mind, do you, Mom?" It wasn't really a question. Derek floated through it all like a shadow, agreeing with everything Megan said, avoiding my eyes when I tried to talk to him. My son, who I'd raised to be kind, to be strong, had become a stranger in his own childhood home. One evening, I tried to log on to the Wi-Fi to email an old friend. Password incorrect. "Megan changed it," Derek said when I asked. "Security reasons. I'll get you the new one later." He never did. I was being erased, slowly, methodically, and I was too deep in grief to see it. But the worst was still coming. It happened on a Thursday night, 3 weeks after the funeral. I was sitting in the master bedroom, our bedroom, Robert's and mine, looking through old photo albums when Megan appeared in the doorway. Derek stood behind her, his face carefully blank. "Mom, we need to talk." I closed the album. "About what?" Megan stepped into the room like she owned it, which I suppose she thought she did. "This bedroom situation isn't working," she said. "Derek and I need the master suite. It has the ensuite bathroom, and frankly, it's ridiculous for one person to take up all this space." I stared at her. "This is my bedroom. Robert and I slept here for 40 years. "Robert's gone, Mom." Her voice was flat. Final. "You don't need all this room anymore. The storage space at the end of the hall will be perfect for you. It's cozy, private." The storage space. 8 feet by 10 feet, no window, filled with Christmas decorations and boxes of things we'd never unpacked. "Derek," I said, turning to my son, "you can't be serious." He wouldn't meet my eyes. "Mom, it's just practical. Megan works from home, and I'm not moving into a closet." "It's not a closet," Megan snapped. "It's a room, and honestly, you should be grateful we're here at all. Do you know how much assisted living costs?" The threat hung in the air between us. That night, I slept on a folding cot surrounded by boxes of ornaments and the ghost of my husband's memory. Through the wall, I could hear Megan laughing at something on her phone. In the morning, I saw her making the bed with new sheets, pink ones. Robert hated pink. And that's when I knew this wasn't about space. This was about erasure, about making me disappear. Saturday morning, 3 days after they took my bedroom. I woke to the sound of breaking glass. At first, I thought I was dreaming, but then I heard it again. Crash, crack, shatter, and I knew something was wrong. I found Megan in the living room, standing over a black trash bag. Around her feet lay the remains of our life, photo frames, glass shards, memories. She was holding our wedding portrait. "What are you doing?" My voice came out as a whisper. Megan didn't even flinch. "Redecorating. This place looks like a museum. It's depressing." She dropped the portrait into the bag. I heard the glass break. "Those are my photos. My memories. You can't—" "Move on, Mom." She finally looked at me, and there was nothing in her eyes. No guilt, no shame, nothing. "The dead don't need frames. This house needs to look modern, not like some kind of shrine." I lunged for the bag, trying to save what I could. My fingers found a frame, Derek's first birthday, Robert holding him up to blow out the candle, and I pulled. Megan grabbed my wrist, hard. "Let it go." Behind her, Derek appeared in the doorway. He saw his mother on her knees, his wife's hand on my arm, 40 years of family history scattered across the floor like garbage. He looked at us, and then he turned and walked away. Something broke in me then, something deeper than grief. But something else noticed too. Across the street, Mrs. Eleanor Patterson was walking her dog. She stopped at the end of our driveway, staring at the scene through my open front door, and above her porch I could see the small black eye of her Ring camera, watching, recording, remembering. The days blurred together after that. I became a ghost in my own home. I cooked their meals and washed their dishes. I stayed in my storage room when they had friends over, listening to Megan's laughter through the thin walls. I learned to be invisible, because invisible was safer than present. Megan controlled everything now: the thermostat, the grocery list, the phone. When old friends called, she answered. "Diana's resting," she'd say in her sweetest voice. "She's not up for visitors right now. I'll let her know you called." She never did. I had no car. Robert had always driven. No cell phone. I'd never seen the need. No way to reach the outside world without going through Megan first. One night, I sat on my cot in the darkness, surrounded by Christmas lights I might never hang again, and I held the one photo I'd managed to save. Our wedding day. Robert in his rented tux, me in my mother's dress, both of us so young and so certain that love would be enough. "What do I do?" I whispered to his frozen smile. "Robert, what do I do?" And then I remembered. Harold's words at the funeral. "Call me." Robert left instructions. I crept downstairs at 2 a.m., heart pounding, and found Robert's old address book in a drawer Megan hadn't cleared yet. There, in his careful handwriting, Harold Smith, attorney at law. I hid the book under my mattress. Tomorrow, when Megan went to work, I would make that call. I was done being quiet. I was done being erased. It was time to find out what my husband had left behind. Monday morning. Megan left for a meeting at 9 a.m. Derek followed an hour later, mumbling something about the gym. The moment his car disappeared around the corner, I picked up the house phone and dialed Harold's number with shaking fingers. He answered on the second ring. "Smith Law Office." "Harold," my voice cracked. "It's Diana Sommers." A pause, then softly. "I've been waiting for this call." Something in his tone made my chest tighten. "You said Robert left instructions. At the funeral you said, 'Not over the phone, Diana. We need to meet. Today, if possible. There are things you need to know. Things Robert wanted to tell you himself, but—'" He trailed off. "Can you get to my office, 2 p.m.? I thought about Megan's schedule. Her calendar was pinned to the refrigerator. She liked everyone to know how busy and important she was. She had meetings until 4. "I'll be there." "Diana." Harold's voice was urgent now. "Don't tell anyone. Not Derek, not Megan, no one. Do you understand?" "I understand." I hung up and stood there for a long moment, my hand still on the receiver. The house was silent around me, but it didn't feel oppressive anymore. It felt like possibility. I called an Uber, something I'd never done before, but I'd watched Megan do it enough times to figure out the app on the old tablet Derek had left in the kitchen. The technology felt foreign in my hands, but desperation is an excellent teacher. At 1:45, I told Derek I had a doctor's appointment. A routine checkup. He barely looked up from his phone. "Okay, Mom." He didn't offer to drive me. He didn't even ask which doctor. Harold's office was on the 3rd floor of a brick building downtown, the kind of place that smelled like old books and important decisions. He met me at the door himself, his face lined with concern. "Diana, thank God." He ushered me inside, closing the door behind us. "I was worried when I didn't hear from you sooner." "I didn't know," I said, sinking into the leather chair across from his desk. "I didn't know I should call. I didn't know anything." Harold sat down heavily, pulling a thick folder from his drawer. The label on the tab made my breath catch. Sommers Family Charitable Trust. "Robert came to me 15 years ago," Harold began. "He was worried, not about money. You two were comfortable. He was worried about protection, about making sure you'd be taken care of if something happened to him. He slid the folder across the desk. He didn't trust Megan. He never said it outright, but I knew. The way he talked about her, the questions he asked about asset protection, about keeping property out of probate. Harold shook his head. Robert was a smart man. He saw what was coming. I opened the folder with trembling hands. Inside was a document I'd never seen before. Sommers Family Charitable Trust, established 2009. And there, on the signature line, my husband's name in his familiar handwriting. "The house," Harold said quietly. "Robert transferred ownership to the trust 15 years ago. It doesn't belong to you, Diana. It doesn't belong to Derek or Megan. It belongs to the trust." "I don't understand." "You're the trustee now, the only trustee. That means you decide who lives there, who stays." He leaned forward. "And who goes." I stared at the document, my husband's final gift taking shape before my eyes. "Robert did this to protect you," Harold said. "He told me once, if anything happens to me, make sure Diana knows she's not powerless. He wanted you to have a choice." For the first time in weeks, I felt something besides grief. I felt hope. "So what does this mean exactly?" I asked, still staring at the trust document. "Can I just tell them to leave?" Harold leaned back in his chair. "Legally, yes. As trustee, you have full authority over trust property. Megan isn't a beneficiary. She has no legal right to be there. Derek is a beneficiary, but that doesn't give him the right to let his wife abuse you in your own home. But if you want to avoid a prolonged legal battle, we need more than just the trust deed. We need evidence that Megan's presence is detrimental to the trust property and its beneficiaries. That means documenting her behavior, her treatment of you, any damage to the property, including," he paused meaningfully, "the destruction of irreplaceable family heirlooms. The photos, the frames, the glass shattering against the hardwood floor." "I don't have proof of that," I said. "It's my word against hers." Harold studied me. "Was anyone else there when it happened? Any witnesses? Security cameras?" And then it hit me. Mrs. Patterson, standing at the end of my driveway, her little dog on its leash, her Ring camera pointed directly at my front porch. "Maybe," I said slowly, "there might be someone." Harold smiled, the first real smile I'd seen from him. "Then we have work to do. Get me that footage, Diana. Get me anything else you can find, texts, emails, anything that shows her intentions, and then we'll plan." "Plan what?" He slid a blank legal pad toward me. "The moment Megan learns she has no claim to that house, and trust me, you want that moment to be public." I picked up the pen. For the first time in weeks, I felt like myself again. Eleanor Patterson had been my neighbor for 23 years. She was a retired schoolteacher, a widow like me, and the unofficial watchdog of Maple Street. Nothing happened on our block without Eleanor knowing about it. Some people found her nosy. I was about to find her invaluable. I waited until Megan was at work and Derek was out, then walked across the street with a tin of cookies I'd baked that morning. Eleanor answered the door before I even knocked. "Diana." Her eyes swept over me, sharp and assessing. "I was wondering when you'd come." She led me to her kitchen, poured tea without asking, and sat across from me with her hands folded on the table. "I saw what happened," she said. "Saturday morning. That woman throwing things into trash bags, you on your knees trying to save them." Her jaw tightened. "I never liked her, you know. Never once said hello to me. Looked right through me like I was furniture." "Eleanor," I set down my teacup, "your Ring camera, the one above your porch, does it record everything that happens on your front lawn?" She was already standing, moving toward her laptop on the counter. "It certainly does. I save the footage for 30 days, just in case." She pulled up the file and turned the screen toward me. There it was, time-stamped and crystal clear. Megan dragging the trash bag, me reaching for the photos, Megan grabbing my wrist, her face twisted with irritation. "I can transfer this to a USB drive," Eleanor said quietly, "and I can testify to what I saw, if it comes to that." I looked at this woman I'd known for decades, but never truly appreciated. "Thank you," I whispered. "Don't thank me yet." Eleanor's eyes glinted. "Thank me when that woman is out of your house." The third piece of evidence found me. It was a Tuesday night, almost 11. I couldn't sleep. The cot was uncomfortable and the storage room smelled like mothballs no matter how many times I opened the door. So I crept downstairs for a glass of water, moving quietly so I wouldn't wake anyone. That's when I saw it. Derek's iPad, sitting on the kitchen counter. The screen was lit up, unlocked, a text conversation open. I knew I shouldn't look. I knew it was an invasion of privacy. But something made me stop. Something made me lean closer. The messages were between Derek and Megan. Megan: "When is your mother going to accept the nursing home idea? I can't take much more of this." Derek: "Give it a few more weeks. She'll break eventually." Megan: "She better. I want this house on the market by spring. The longer we wait, the more value we lose." Derek: "It'll be ours soon. Just be patient." Megan: "Ours? It should be ours now. She's useless, Derek. A burden. The sooner she's in a facility, the sooner we can start living." I read the words 3 times, my heart turning to ice in my chest. My son. My only child. The baby I'd held in my arms, the boy I'd raised with love and sacrifice and hope, planning to throw me away. With shaking hands, I pulled out the old flip phone I'd hidden in my robe pocket, a prepaid one I'd bought at the pharmacy with cash, and photographed the screen, every message, every timestamp. Then I set the iPad exactly as I'd found it and went back to my storage room. I didn't cry. I was past crying. I was building a case. Megan started watching me. I noticed it first at breakfast, the way her eyes followed me around the kitchen, narrowing slightly when I reached for my coat, the way she'd appear in doorways when I was on the phone, even though I was only calling the pharmacy about my prescriptions. "You seem different lately, Mom," she said one evening, her voice syrup-sweet. "More energetic." "I'm trying to stay active," I replied, keeping my face neutral. "The doctor said walking is good for grief." She didn't look convinced. The next day, I overheard her talking to Derek in their bedroom, my bedroom. "She's up to something. I can feel it." "Mom? She's a 68-year-old widow. What could she possibly be up to?" "I don't know, but she's been going out more, and I checked the call history on the house phone." A pause. "She called Harold Smith, Robert's lawyer." Silence. "Why would she call him?" Derek's voice was different now, wary. "That's what I want to know. Google him. He's an estate and trust attorney." Another pause, longer this time. "What if Robert left something we don't know about? Some kind of arrangement?" I pressed myself against the wall, barely breathing. "You're being paranoid," Derek said finally. "Dad didn't have secrets. And even if he did, Mom wouldn't know what to do with them. She can barely work the coffee machine." Megan's laugh was sharp. "You're probably right. She's harmless." I heard footsteps approaching and slipped back to my room, my heart pounding. Harmless. They had no idea what a 35-year career in accounting had taught me about patience, documentation, and the long game. But they were about to learn. The confrontation came 2 days later. I was folding laundry in the living room when Megan appeared, Derek trailing behind her like a reluctant shadow. Her arms were crossed, her jaw set, her eyes hard. "We need to talk about the lawyer." I kept folding. A towel, a pillowcase, steady hands, steady breath. "What about him?" "Why did you call Harold Smith?" I looked up, letting confusion cross my face. "Harold? He was Robert's friend. I wanted to ask about tax forms, widow's exemptions, that kind of thing. It's complicated when a spouse dies." Megan studied me, searching for cracks. That's it? Tax forms? What else would it be? She glanced at Derek, who shrugged helplessly. I could see the doubt in her eyes, the suspicion warring with her certainty that I was just a harmless old woman. Fine, she said finally. But while we're talking, Derek and I have been discussing your future. Here it comes, I thought. We really think you should consider Sunrise Assisted Living. It's a lovely facility. They have activities, medical staff on site, people your own age to socialize with. She smiled, all teeth. We can't take care of you forever, Mom. It's not fair to any of us. I let my shoulders slump, let my voice waver. I don't know. This is my home. It's a house, Megan said. Houses can be sold. Memories can be made anywhere. She patted my arm, her touch cold. Just think about it. That's all we're asking. I nodded meekly. I'll think about it. She walked away satisfied, certain she'd won. She didn't see me straighten up the moment she was gone, didn't see the steel in my eyes. I wasn't thinking about leaving. I was thinking about the eviction notice Harold was drafting, and the party where I'd serve it. Everything is ready. Harold spread the documents across his desk. Eviction notice for Megan, 30 days to vacate, legally airtight. A formal warning letter for Derek regarding his obligations as a beneficiary, and the trust deed itself, freshly certified with the county seal. The question now, Harold said, is how you want to deliver it. I'd thought about this for days. A quiet conversation would let Megan spin the story her way, play the victim, turn the family against me before I could explain. A legal letter would give her time to prepare, to lawyer up, to drag this into a war of attrition. No, this needed to be public. It needed witnesses. My birthday is in 2 weeks, I said. I'm turning 69. Megan's been talking about throwing a party, small, just family and close friends. She wants to look like the devoted daughter-in-law. Harold raised an eyebrow. And you want to use that? I want to invite everyone who matters. Robert's side of the family, my side, the neighbors, Pastor Davis from the funeral. I met his eyes. I want them all there when the truth comes out. That's theatrical. Megan destroyed my wedding photos in front of God and everyone who happened to be walking by. She moved me into a closet. She's planning to ship me off to a nursing home so she can sell my house. I leaned forward. I think I've earned a little theater. Harold was quiet for a moment. Then he smiled. Robert always said you were stronger than you looked. He gathered the documents, sliding them into a manila envelope. I'll be there. As a guest, of course. An old friend of the family. And Eleanor Patterson will bring her laptop, just in case anyone needs to see the video. The trap was set. All that was left was the performance. The story is getting intense now. Diana has her evidence, her allies, and her plan. But will Megan see it coming? Will Derek finally choose a side? If you want to find out what happens at that birthday party, hit that like button and make sure you're subscribed. And drop a comment. What do you think Megan's reaction will be? Let's keep going. The night before my birthday, I couldn't sleep. I sat on my cot in the storage room, the one photo I'd saved propped against a box of Christmas lights. Robert smiled up at me, frozen in time, forever young in his rented tuxedo. I'm scared, I whispered to him. What if I'm wrong? What if this makes everything worse? The photo didn't answer. Of course it didn't. But I could imagine what Robert would say. I could hear his voice in my memory, steady and sure. Diana, you've never been wrong about people. You just didn't want to believe what you saw. He was right. I'd known what Megan was from the beginning. I'd just chosen to hope I was mistaken. I thought about Derek, my son, the baby I'd nursed through fevers, the boy I'd helped with homework, the teenager I'd taught to drive. Where had that boy gone? When had he become this hollow man who watched his wife throw away his father's memory and said nothing? I didn't know if I could save him. I didn't know if he wanted to be saved. But I knew I couldn't save myself by staying silent. I'm going to do it, Robert, I said to the photo. Tomorrow. I'm going to stand up for myself. For us. For everything we built. The house was quiet around me. Through the wall, I could hear Megan's muffled laughter at something on her phone. I set down the photo, lay back on my cot, and closed my eyes. Tomorrow, everything would change, one way or another. The house looked beautiful. I'll give Megan that. She'd hired a caterer, rented white tablecloths, arranged flowers in vases I didn't recognize. A banner over the fireplace read, "Happy 69th birthday, Diana," in elegant script. If you didn't know better, you'd think she was the most devoted daughter-in-law in the world. The guests arrived in waves. Robert's brother Thomas and his wife, my cousin Margaret and her husband, neighbors from up and down Maple Street, Pastor Davis, still in his clerical collar, shaking hands and offering blessings, and Eleanor Patterson, clutching her oversized purse with the laptop hidden inside. Harold came last, slipping through the door just as Megan was calling everyone to the living room. She saw him and froze for just a moment. I caught the flicker of recognition, the flash of unease, before her hostess' smile snapped back into place. "Harold, so glad you could make it. You were such a good friend to Robert." "Wouldn't miss it," Harold said smoothly. "Diana and I have a lot to catch up on." Megan's smile tightened, but she recovered quickly, steering him toward the refreshment table, playing her role to perfection. I stood in the corner, watching, waiting. I was wearing the navy blue dress Robert had always loved, the pearl necklace he'd given me on our wedding day. I'd spent an hour on my hair and makeup, not for vanity, but for armor. When you're about to go to war, you dress for battle. Derek caught my eye across the room. For a moment, something flickered in his face. Guilt? Fear? Recognition? Then Megan called him over, and the moment was gone. It was almost time. "Everyone, can I have your attention?" I stood in the center of the living room, a champagne glass in my hand, my voice steadier than I felt. The conversations died down. Faces turned toward me, curious, expectant, polite. Megan stood near the kitchen doorway, her smile frozen in place. "Thank you all for coming," I began. 69 years. It's strange to say that number out loud. It feels like yesterday I was a young bride, walking down the aisle toward the man who would become my whole world. Murmurs of sympathy. Someone said, "We miss Robert too." "I miss him every day," I continued. "Every morning when I wake up, every night when I go to sleep. 42 years of marriage, and I still reach for him in the dark." I paused, letting the emotion settle. But this birthday is different, because there are things I haven't told you, things that have happened since Robert died. I looked around the room, meeting eyes. Things that have happened in this house. The atmosphere shifted. I could feel it, the curiosity sharpening into something else, attention, anticipation. Megan stepped forward. "Mom, maybe you should sit down. You seem tired." "I'm not tired, Megan." I smiled at her, and for the first time, I let her see the steel beneath the softness. "I'm just getting started." Her face went pale. 3 weeks after I buried my husband, I said, turning back to the guests. I was moved out of the bedroom we'd shared for 40 years. I was put in a storage closet at the end of the hall, 8 feet by 10 feet, no window. Gasps, whispers. And that, I said quietly, was only the beginning. The room had gone completely silent. 1 week after I was moved to the storage room, I continued, I woke up to the sound of breaking glass. I came downstairs to find my daughter-in-law throwing our family photos into trash bags. Wedding pictures, baby photos, 40 years of memories tossed away like garbage. I looked at Megan. Her face was a mask, but I could see her hands trembling. When I tried to stop her, "Do you know what she said?" I paused, letting the moment stretch. "Move on, Mom. The dead don't need frames." The gasps were louder now. Robert's brother Thomas was staring at Megan with undisguised horror. "That's not—" Megan started. "She's confused. She's been struggling since Robert—" "I have proof." Eleanor Patterson stood up, laptop already open. "I live across the street. My Ring camera recorded everything that happened on Diana's front porch that morning." She turned the screen toward the room. "Would you like to see?" The video played, clear as day. Megan dragging the trash bag, me on my knees reaching for the photos. Megan grabbing my wrist, her face twisted with irritation. The timestamp glowed in the corner, 9:47 a.m., 3 weeks ago. That's taken out of context, Megan sputtered. I was helping her declutter. She asked me to... I asked you to throw away my wedding photos? My voice was ice. I asked you to put me in a closet? I asked you to treat me like a burden in my own home? The room erupted, voices overlapping, accusations flying. Thomas was on his feet, pointing at Megan. Margaret had her arm around me. Pastor Davis was shaking his head in disbelief. Through it all, Derek stood frozen, his face the color of ash. And Megan. Megan was looking at me like she was seeing me for the first time. Not a harmless old woman. Not a burden to be discarded. A threat. But I wasn't finished yet. You can't do this! Megan's voice cracked. This is our house. Derek's inheritance. You have no right. Actually, I said calmly, that's where you're wrong. I nodded to Harold, who rose from his seat and walked to my side, a manila envelope in his hands. My name is Harold Smith, he announced. I was Robert Sommers' attorney for 30 years, and I'm here to clarify a legal matter that seems to have been misunderstood. He pulled out the trust document, holding it up for everyone to see. This is the Sommers Family Charitable Trust, established in 2009. 15 years ago, Robert transferred ownership of this property into the trust. The house does not belong to Diana. It does not belong to Derek. He looked directly at Megan. And it certainly does not belong to you. That's impossible, Megan whispered. The deed was transferred, legally, properly, recorded with the county recorder's office. Harold's voice was steady, professional, devastating. Diana is the sole surviving trustee. She has complete authority over trust property, including who is allowed to reside here. The room was silent. You're lying. Megan's voice was shrill now. This is some kind of trick. Derek, tell them. Derek didn't move, didn't speak. Just stared at the document in Harold's hands like it was a bomb about to detonate. Robert did this to protect his wife, Harold continued. He knew what might happen after he was gone. He wanted to make sure Diana would never be powerless in her own home. I stepped forward, my eyes locked on Megan's. My husband saw you clearly, I said softly. He saw what you were, and he made sure you would never take what wasn't yours. For the first time since I'd known her, Megan had nothing to say. But I did. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the envelope I'd been carrying all day. Megan, I said, this is a formal eviction notice. You have 30 days to vacate this property. She stared at the envelope like it was a snake. You can't just... She turned wildly to Derek. Do something! Say something! But Derek was looking at me now, really looking for the first time in months. Mom, he said, his voice hoarse, did you know about this the whole time? I found out after your father died, when I finally called Harold like Robert wanted me to. I held his gaze. You're still a beneficiary, Derek. You can stay. But you need to make a choice. A choice? Between the woman who's been trying to throw me away and the mother who raised you. The room held its breath. Pastor Davis stepped forward, his hands raised. Perhaps we should all take a moment to... No! I shook my head. I've taken enough moments. I've been quiet for too long, patient for too long, hoping things would get better on their own. I looked around at the faces of my family, my friends, my neighbors. I'm 69 years old. I buried my husband. I was put in a closet. I watched my memories be thrown in the trash. And I'm done. I turned back to Megan, who was still clutching the eviction notice with white-knuckled hands. 30 days, I said. And then, this door closes. It wasn't revenge. It was a boundary. And it was long overdue. The party dissolved into chaos. Megan screamed. There's no other word for it. A raw, ugly sound that had nothing to do with grief and everything to do with rage. She called me names I won't repeat, words that made Pastor Davis wince, and Thomas step protectively in front of me. You manipulative old witch, she shrieked. "You planned this! You set me up!" "I documented the truth," I replied calmly. "There's a difference." She lunged toward me, but Derek caught her arm. It was the first time I'd seen him stand up to her in years, though whether he was protecting me or just preventing a scene, I couldn't tell. "Megan, stop. Just stop. Don't you dare take her side." Megan whirled on him. "After everything I've done for this family? After putting up with her for 8 years? Putting up with me?" I asked quietly. "In my home? Eating food I cooked? Living rent-free while you planned to ship me off to a nursing home?" The guests were murmuring now. I saw my cousin Margaret nodding grimly. Saw Eleanor Patterson with her phone out, probably recording this too. "Robert's aunt always said that girl was trouble," Thomas muttered, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Should have listened." Megan's face contorted. She grabbed her purse, grabbed her coat, and stormed toward the door. "This isn't over," she spat at me. "I'll get a lawyer. I'll fight this. You'll regret—" "The trust deed is 15 years old, properly recorded, and legally unassailable," Harold said mildly. "But you're welcome to try." The door slammed behind her. The room exhaled, and Derek stood in the middle of the living room, looking like a man who'd just watched his whole world collapse, which I suppose he had. I should have stopped there. Part of me wanted to. The part that still remembered Derek as a baby in my arms, as a little boy running through this house, as the young man who danced with me at his wedding. But the truth was the truth, and everyone in this room deserved to know it. "There's one more thing," I said. The murmurs died down. Derek looked at me with something like dread. I didn't want to believe my son was part of this. I wanted to think he was just passive, weak, manipulated. I pulled my phone from my pocket, the prepaid one with the screenshot saved. But then I found these. I read the messages aloud. "Megan, when is your mother going to accept the nursing home idea? I can't take much more of this." "Derek, give it a few more weeks. She'll break eventually." Gasps, whispers. "Megan, I want this house on the market by spring." "Derek, it'll be ours soon. Just be patient." I looked at my son. "Is there anything you want to say, Derek?" He opened his mouth, closed it. His face was gray. Thomas stepped toward him. "Derek, tell me you didn't write those things." Silence. "Derek." Derek's voice cracked. "I didn't mean... I just wanted to keep Megan happy. I didn't think..." "No," I said quietly. "You didn't think about me, about your father, about anything except keeping your wife satisfied." The room was silent. My son had no defense, and I had no more words for him. Not today. The guests left slowly, in awkward clusters of whispered goodbyes and pitying glances. By 9 o'clock, the house was empty except for me and Derek. He sat on the couch where his father used to read the Sunday paper, with his head in his hands. "Mom," his voice was muffled. "I'm sorry." I stood by the window, looking out at the dark street. Eleanor's porch light was still on. I wondered if she was watching. "Are you sorry for what you did?" I asked. "Or sorry you got caught?" Silence. That's what I thought. "I love you, Mom. I do. He looked up, and for a moment I saw the boy he used to be. Lost, confused, desperate for someone to tell him what to do. Megan was so sure. She said the house would be ours eventually anyway. She said you'd be happier in a facility, with people your own age. She made it sound reasonable. She made it sound profitable." He flinched. "Derek." I turned to face him. "I will always love you. You're my son. But love doesn't mean accepting abuse. It doesn't mean watching someone destroy my life and saying nothing. What do you want me to do? I want you to become the man your father raised you to be. I want you to look at your choices and decide if this is who you want to be." I paused. "And I want you to understand that forgiveness isn't automatic. It's earned." He was quiet for a long moment. Can I stay tonight?" "Yes." I moved toward the stairs. "But tomorrow, we talk. Really talk. about who you are and who you want to become. I left him sitting there in the dark. It was a start. Megan didn't go quietly. The next morning, a lawyer called Harold's office, demanding a meeting, threatening litigation, claiming elder abuse, coercion, undue influence over the trust. Harold called me, amused. "She hired someone from a strip mall law firm," he said. "They took one look at the trust documents and told her she had no case. But she's not giving up." "What is she doing now?" "Social media, apparently. Check Facebook." I didn't have Facebook, but Eleanor did. She came over with her phone, scrolling through a post Megan had written that morning. "My mother-in-law is a manipulative, vindictive woman who turned my husband's family against me on my own birthday party. She's trying to steal our home and throw us out on the street. Please share this so people know the truth about elder abuse. By elders." I read it twice, waiting to feel something. Anger, hurt, vindication. I felt nothing. "She's getting destroyed in the comments," Eleanor said with satisfaction. "Look, your cousin Margaret wrote a whole paragraph about what really happened, and Thomas shared the video." Within 3 hours, Megan had deleted the post. Within 3 days, her lawyer had withdrawn. "She can't afford a real legal battle," Harold explained. "Her income depends on living rent-free in your house. Without that, she's got nothing." I thought about Megan, her designer clothes, her expensive coffee machine, her plans for a $1.2 million windfall. All of it built on sand. "What happens now?" I asked. "Now?" Harold smiled. "Now we wait. The 30 days will pass, and then she'll have to face reality." Reality, I was learning, had a way of catching up with everyone. "We're almost at the end now. Diana has won the battle, but what about the war? What happens when the 30 days are up? And can she ever repair her relationship with Derek? If you've made it this far, you're clearly invested. Hit that like button, drop a comment with the word justice, and let's finish this story together." A week after the party, Derek came to see me. He looked different, thinner, older. The confidence that Megan had given him, or that he'd borrowed from her, was gone, replaced by something rawer, something more honest. "Mom, can we talk?" I led him to the back porch, where Robert and I used to have our Sunday coffee. The roses were dormant now, but I could still see their shapes in the garden beds, waiting for spring. "I talked to Megan," he said. "Really talked. For the first time in I don't know how long." "And?" "I told her she needed to apologize to you, publicly, in writing, to everyone who was at the party." I raised an eyebrow. "What did she say?" "She said if I took your side, she'd file for divorce." The words hung in the air between us. "So," I said carefully, "what did you decide?" Derek was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was thick. "I decided that I've spent 8 years being someone I don't recognize. Someone who watches his mother get hurt and does nothing. Someone who lets his wife make all the decisions because it's easier than fighting." He looked at me, and I saw tears in his eyes. "I don't want to be that person anymore." "What does that mean, Derek?" "It means I'm moving out. With Megan for now. I can't just abandon her. But I'm not signing anything against you. I'm not fighting the trust, and He swallowed. "I'm going to therapy, to figure out how I got here." I reached out and took his hand. "That's a start," I said softly. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was a door left open. 30 days passed faster than I expected. On the morning of the deadline, a moving truck pulled into the driveway. I watched from the living room window as strangers carried boxes out of my house, boxes filled with Megan's designer pillows and Derek's old sports trophies and the pink sheets that had replaced my blue ones. Megan didn't look at me. Not once. She directed the movers with clipped efficiency, her sunglasses hiding whatever was in her eyes. Shame, maybe, or just anger. Derek paused at the front door. "Mom." I walked over to him. He looked exhausted, dark circles under his eyes, his shoulders slumped like he was carrying something heavy. "I'll call you," he said, "when I'm settled, when I've figured some things out." I'll be here. He hesitated, then leaned in and kissed my cheek. It was the first time he'd shown me affection in months. I'm sorry, he whispered, for everything. I know. I squeezed his arm. But sorry is just the beginning, Derek. You have to show me. With actions, not words. He nodded, not trusting himself to speak. Then he walked to the car where Megan was waiting, her arms crossed, her foot tapping impatiently. He got in without looking back. The car pulled away, the moving truck followed, and just like that, my house was mine again. Eleanor appeared at my elbow with a plate of cookies. How do you feel? I looked around the empty living room, the bare walls where photos used to hang, the spaces where furniture had been rearranged and then removed. I feel, I said slowly, like I can finally breathe. 2 weeks later, a letter arrived. It was on legal letterhead, Megan's lawyer, the one from the strip mall. But the content wasn't legal. It was personal, an apology. I read it 3 times, looking for loopholes, for hidden barbs, for the Megan I knew lurking between the lines. But it was straightforward, almost sincere. I, Megan Sommers, acknowledge that my behavior toward my mother-in-law, Diana Sommers, was inappropriate and hurtful. I regret the way I treated her following her husband's death, including my handling of family photographs and my comments about her living situation. I apologize to Diana and to all family members and friends who witnessed my actions. Harold had negotiated it. In exchange for the apology, sent to everyone who'd attended my birthday party, I agreed not to pursue any civil claims for emotional distress. You could have gotten money, Harold said when he delivered the letter. She doesn't have much, but you could have made her pay. I don't want her money. I set the letter down. I just wanted the truth to be acknowledged, in writing, by her. And now? I looked out the window at the garden. The roses were starting to bud, early this year, as if they knew something had changed. Now I move on, I said. For real this time, not because someone told me to, because I'm ready. Harold nodded, satisfied. Robert would be proud of you, Diana. I smiled. I know. That's what keeps me going. The apology wasn't about revenge. It was about accountability. And finally, after everything, I had it. Spring came slowly that year. I spent the first weeks reclaiming my home, moving back into the master bedroom, our bedroom, with fresh sheets in Robert's favorite blue, hanging new prints of our wedding photo, reprinted from negatives I'd found in the basement, rearranging the furniture until the living room felt like mine again. Eleanor helped. She'd show up with coffee and opinions, telling me which curtains looked best, which throw pillows were too young for me, which paint colors would brighten the kitchen. You need to join my book club, she announced one afternoon. We meet every Thursday. Mostly we drink wine and complain about our children, but occasionally we discuss literature. I laughed, a real laugh, the kind I hadn't felt in months. I'd like that. Pastor Davis stopped by too, bringing communion and conversation. He didn't push me to talk about what had happened, but he listened when I needed to. Forgiveness is a process, he said once. It's not a single moment. It's a choice you make over and over again. I'm not sure I'm there yet, I admitted. That's okay. God is patient, and so is healing. I started walking every morning, the way the doctor had suggested. Around the block at first, then further, to the park, to the coffee shop on Main Street, to the library where I'd spent so many hours when Derek was young. The world felt bigger now, or maybe I just felt bigger in it. I was still grieving Robert. I would always grieve him. But I was also, slowly, starting to live again. The phone rang on a Tuesday evening, 3 months after the eviction. Mom? Derek's voice was different, quieter, less certain, but also, somehow, more real. Derek. I sat down in Robert's old armchair, the one I'd moved back to its spot by the window. How are you? A long pause. Megan and I are getting divorced. I let the words settle. I'd expected this in a way, but hearing it still felt like something shifting, some final piece falling into place. Are you okay? I don't know. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "I'm in therapy, like I said, twice a week. It's hard, looking at myself, at the choices I made." "That's good, Derek. That's important." "I keep thinking about Dad." His voice cracked. "About how disappointed he'd be. About how I let you down, both of you. Your father loved you. He always loved you. Did he know? About Megan? About what she was?" I thought about the trust. About Robert's quiet preparations, his careful protections. He suspected, but he hoped he was wrong. Silence. "Mom, can I come see you? Not to move back in, just to talk. Start over, if that's even possible." I closed my eyes, saw Derek as a baby, as a boy, as the man who'd watched his wife destroy my life and said nothing. And then I saw him now, broken, trying. "Come on Sunday," I said. "We'll have coffee on the back porch, like your father and I used to." "Thank you, Mom. Don't thank me yet, we have a long way to go." But we were going. That was what mattered. I found the letter a week later. I was going through the trust documents again. Harold had suggested I familiarize myself with everything, in case questions came up later, when an envelope slipped out from between the pages. My name was written on the front in Robert's handwriting. My hands trembled as I opened it. "My dearest Diana, if you're reading this, then I'm gone, and you found your way to Harold. I'm sorry I couldn't tell you about the trust while I was alive. I didn't want to worry you. I didn't want you to think I was preparing for the worst. But I was. Because I know you, my love. I know how kind you are, how trusting, how willing to see the best in people even when they don't deserve it. I was afraid that after I was gone, someone might try to take advantage of that kindness. I hope I was wrong. I hope Derek and Megan have been good to you, and this letter is unnecessary. But if I was right, if you're reading this because you needed Harold's help, then I want you to know, you are not powerless. You never were. You are the strongest woman I've ever known, even when you don't feel strong. Fight for yourself, Diana. You deserve to be treated with dignity. You deserve to be loved. I will love you forever. Robert. I held the letter to my chest and cried, not from grief this time, from gratitude. The following month, I met with Harold to update the trust. "Are you sure about this?" he asked, reviewing the changes I'd requested. "I'm sure." Derek would remain a beneficiary, but with conditions. He had to maintain what the document called a respectful and supportive relationship with me. No more silence, no more looking away. If he wanted to be part of this family's legacy, he had to act like it. And when I died, the house wouldn't go to Derek at all. It would be sold, and the proceeds would go to a charity that helped elderly people who'd been abused or exploited by their families. People like me, people who'd been made to feel small in their own homes. "Robert would approve," Harold said quietly. "I know." I signed the documents with a steady hand. "That's why I'm doing it." The house had never been about money, not to Robert and not to me. It was about safety, about dignity, about having a place in the world that no one could take away. I was making sure that legacy meant something. "One more thing," I said, as Harold gathered the papers. "I want to add a clause. If Derek ever has children, if I ever have grandchildren, they become beneficiaries too, directly, not through Derek." Harold raised an eyebrow. "Protecting the next generation?" "Someone has to," I smiled. "Robert taught me that." The documents were filed, the boundaries were set, and I was finally, fully free. 1 year later. Sunday morning. The sun was just coming up, painting the garden in shades of gold and rose. I sat on the back porch with a cup of coffee, still too strong, the way Robert used to make it, and watched the roses bloom. They were beautiful this year, red and full and perfect, just like the ones in my wedding bouquet. A car pulled into the driveway. Derek got out, carrying a bouquet of his own, red roses, wrapped in paper. "Morning, Mom." "Morning." He sat down beside me, setting the flowers on the table between us. We didn't speak for a while. We didn't need to. The silence between us had changed. It wasn't heavy anymore. It was just quiet. "I've been thinking about Dad," Derek said finally, "about the kind of man he was, the kind of man I want to be." "And?" "I'm getting there, slowly." He looked at me. "Thank you for not giving up on me." "You're my son. I'll never give up on you." I reached over and squeezed his hand. "But I'll also never let you forget what happened. That's not cruelty. That's honesty." "I know." He squeezed back. "I'm grateful for it." We sat together as the sun rose higher, the coffee growing cold between us. The house was quiet. The garden was blooming. And for the first time in a long time, I felt at peace. Not because I had won, but because I had finally learned to stand up for myself. And that, I realized, was the greatest gift Robert had ever given me. Thank you for staying with Diana until the end. If you've ever been made to feel small by someone who should have protected you, remember this: kindness is not weakness. Silence is not agreement, and you deserve to be treated with dignity. If this story touched you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. I'll see you in the next story. Until then, set your boundaries and hold them.